Hi everyone, welcome to the weekly review of my M1 Finance dividend portfolio. Balance on the account is $132,582.63. This is a pretty significant increase from last week, but we're going to get into all of the details. Let's look at the performance for the past week. Overall, the portfolio was up 1.33% or $1,727.98. Let's look at the hold-ins. VU was up 1.68% or $1,085.04. SCHD was up 0.98% or $642.94. Let's look at the deposits for the past week. There was a bit of a snafu / error this past week with a $4,000 deposit that I made, but we're going to talk through all of it. So on May 13th, I put in $100 and it traded that same day. It all went into VU and I got 0.20 shares. Now on May 14th, as you see here, there was a deposit of $4,000 that went in. And then that same day on May 14th, there was a buy of $4,000. It all went into VU and I got 8.35 shares. Now you're seeing here, right after that on May 16th, there was a reversal charge of $4,000. So, and then an ACH return fee of $30. So let me talk you through this. So I put in a trade for $4,000 on May 14th, which is the day before I typically get paid, which is May 15th. Now I do that because when I put in the trade on May 14th, it doesn't trade until May 15th, which is my actual payday. But in this case, it actually traded the same day. So I actually didn't have $4,000 in my bank account on May 14th, because again, I was getting paid on May 15th. So it traded on May 14th, but then when M1 Finance went to my bank account to pull the $4,000, there wasn't any money there. So because of that, they took back the money. My bank took back the money that M1 Finance took. And then M1 Finance charged me a $30 fee for the inconvenience for the ACH being returned back. Because what M1 Finance does is that it loans you the money short term, right? Just on good faith that, listen, if you're kind of putting together a trade, they're going to get the money the next day. Probably most of their clients do have the money and everything works out fine. But in this case, I did have the money technically, but it wasn't going to be there until May 15th, but they pulled it on May 14th. So all of that went back into my portfolio on May 16th. Then I put the trade in again, the deposit in again for $4,000. You see here, May 16th, it actually did go through. You see the $4,000 deposit here. And then I reached out to M1 Finance to have them credit me the return fee of $30. So you see here, M1 Plus refund of $30. So I got that back. And then I put in an extra $50 to be traded. And that traded on May 16th. It all went to VU. And I got 0.10 shares. So all of this debacle to say, don't schedule trades until the day that you actually paid. Because if you try to like front load it and do it the day before, because you know the money won't be pulled until the day after, sometimes you can run into situations like this where the information, the money's just not there to cover the trade. So yeah, this was a pretty big deposit from my May 15th paycheck. That paycheck in particular, I do heavily invest because I have, that gap between what I need for my expenses versus what's left over. So I make investing heavily a priority. For the May 15th check, originally I was thinking of putting this $4,000 in my emergency fund, but I decided against that and instead to put it towards investing because I am interested in early retirement. So this $4,000 went to my brokerage account versus the emergency fund. I put $500 in the emergency fund and I feel good about it. Of course, I want to keep on working towards building up my emergency fund, but heavily invest in is also a really, really important. It's really, really important for me as well. So this might have been a little bit confusing, but in short, I put $4,000 to get traded. It did get traded. I didn't have the money that day, so the money got pulled back, but then it got traded again because I put the money in. So for the past week, I put in, so it's going to be the $100 plus the $4,000 plus the $50. So that's $4,150. And if we go back to the main page of the portfolio, we can see that recap. We started the week at $126,704.66. I put in $4,150, and then the market gain of $1,727 is what brings the portfolio up to $132,582.63. Something else that I want to highlight, I did go ahead and change the allocation for the portfolio last week. I told you all that I was conflicted in terms of, do I keep it 50-50, VU and SCHD, or do I adjust it? So I did go ahead and adjust it to 60% VU, as you see here, and 40% SCHD. So this is the new allocation for the portfolio. I'm going to work on getting the portfolio balanced to this percentage just from continuous investment and deposits, but I did go ahead and update the allocation. So it's no longer 50-50. It's now again going to be 60% VU and 40% SCHD. And for the upcoming week, I have $100 set to trade, and that is all going to go into VU. And that is it. Let's go ahead and look at the holdings. Overall, the portfolio is up $10,912.74, or 8.97%. VU is up 9.7%, or $5,887.94. And SCHD is up 8.24%, or $5,024.80. So overall, I'm trugging along for the portfolio. I'm trying my best to invest as much as I can, but I just got to take it one day at a time. And it's going to be a partnership between me heavily investing, but then also the stock market actually helping me out. This past week it did, but hopefully that momentum continues. All right, that is all the updates for this week. Just a big deposit of $4,000 and my error in how I did that, and then the update in the portfolio application. Let me know how your portfolio is doing, or if you agree or disagree with any of the moves that I made. I'm always open to conversation and comments, and I'll catch you next week.